Everyone. I'm Ed Akins with Cove, and I'll be running through the AIA second quarter economic forecast that was recently published. Want to cover just some insights both with housing, labor force, and some tariff insights, as well as ending with a little bit of feedback that came from the recent ABI, the Architects Billing Index, that outlines the outlook in the architectural space as well. So with that, let's get going. Got a good bit of content to cover, and we'll end with a little bit of Q&A as well. So, in the most recent report, looking at the economic conditions that we are facing as we enter into 2025, many of our businesses are aware of this, the heightened uncertainty in the market, and the different forces that are impacting our profession, many of which somewhat out of our control. And how we are responding to those varies, of course, across each sector and each region within the US. Um, Investment has been seen slowing down. There have been some abandoned projects or some delays in construction moving ahead or project starts. And overall, in architecture, most firms are expecting some modest growth to continue, but not as aggressive, I would say, in their outlook heading through this year. Now, we've known through the ABI over the course of the past few months, I would say the past 6 months, there have been indicators for a slowdown in 2025. So this is nothing that was unexpected, but at least in this update that the AIA provided last week, we were able to see a little more granular insight into what's going on. And so that's what I'm going to share with you today. Um, Within that granularity, I want to focus on three primary topics, and then we'll end with just general overview and takeaways. The three big topics we're going to cover: housing, labor force, and the tariffs themselves, and how they're impacting the AEC and architects as well, in particular. The first one I want to touch on is housing affordability, but also the uh, lacking supply that we currently have. Um, I think it's important to pay attention to that because in that sector and in that market, if you're practicing in that space, there's still a sincere need across our nation for more housing units. And depending on who we ask, that deficit varies really widely. Now, how do we get into this issue of scarcity when we're talking about housing? Basically, in the last decade, we were way behind in terms of the number of units that were entering into the market. So this disparity of what would be an average of around 14 or more million units hitting the market, being down at around the 10 level, 2010 to 2019 in the last decade, definitely impact us. So paying attention to that and then projecting that into what we're looking at now as a need within the market is extremely important to pay attention to, and gives me some optimism, at least in that sector, in terms of what's needed and the potential market that's out there, the desire that's out there for society. One of the things working against us in the housing space right now is housing prices and how much they've increased. So 52% above the pre-pandemic levels in terms of the price, and then our mortgage rates basically increasing rapidly as well. So entry into the market, entry into home ownership has been dramatically impacted. This, of course, has a little bit of a chilling effect in terms of development because developers are looking at the potential to sell their product, housing units on the market. And if they know that the potential owners out there are facing such difficulty entering into it financially, that, of course, reflects the need for development and the appetite for risk. So, with that, it depends on who you ask what our housing deficit actually is. If we've been underbuilding for quite a while, uh, where are we? So, if we're looking at standard housing, typical housing market rate, and then beginning to add in the affordability component as a unit of measure, we see as we start to add in affordability, and I would say the lack of low income housing in the market, and we start to add in that, it dramatically increases the number of units that we need to be building. So focus on affordable housing, a focus on low-income housing tax credits that still exist, that are available, is a market that's quite strong and needed. I'm located here in Atlanta, Georgia, and our leadership within the city has been dedicated to addressing the deficit we've had over the past decades, for affordable units, and is making actions towards that and leveraging whatever financial incentives are available, including land ownership, land trusts, and other methods to bring forward those affordable units within the city that are desperately needed. And so that makes up a part of what we see here, let's say in the 7.3 million number of units from the National Low Income Housing Coalition and their estimates, which are very much in line with across multiple cities, really missing the target in terms of providing for their citizenry and what's needed to move people either out of homelessness or out of home insecurity. And of course, that's based on your AMI, which is quite high in a lot of these cities as well. Your area mean income average, and so basically all of these factors working together have us in this deficit. But it's promising, I would say, in terms of a sector that can be resilient through this space because of the sincere need that's out there between 1.5 to 7.3 million units. If we move ahead now to look at labor being impacted by multiple pressures at this point. One of the most important, of course, is the immigration and workforce concerns that are occurring based on immigration policy. What I really liked about the AIA's recent quarterly update and economic forecast was that they got into the specifics of which trades were more impacted through immigration, and then also aligned some of the other areas of construction with how the impacts could hit different sectors or different regions in terms of the workforce that's available. So we're going to dig into that now and look at how that tight labor market may fuel inflation or enter us into a space of concern over inflation as we move through this year. So looking at this, this was published beginning of the year, actually, when the first immigration policies were issued. The AIA documented what our national workforce, labor workforce in construction looks like. We have a national labor force of 12 million. About 3 million of those, 25%, are foreign born. And within that group, mostly the foreign born labor force within construction is focused on drywall, finishing, and roofing trades primarily. And so, if you were to project that into undocumented workers within that foreign born labor force, you can imagine that those trades are going to be the ones that are primarily affected. Now, when they try to parse out, how many of these foreign born laborers in construction are undocumented, roughly 50%, or 1.5 million, is the number that has been generated and publicized so far. That's equivalent of 1 in 8 construction workers out there on the site. And of course, that's going to vary based on where you are in the country. And so, what I appreciate about the AIA report recently was that they broke down what that means to us based on where we are in the overall landscape nationally. And so we're looking at the East Coast with, a 30% to 40% uh, percentage of the workforce being foreign born in many of the states along the East Coast. On the South, you see 51% in Texas, and then the surrounding states as well, with a fairly high percentage, over 25%. And then on the West Coast, 52% over in California, with adjacent states as well hitting an above 30 or around 30% and greater. So when we look at this, we can imagine if we're practicing in any of these areas or have projects in any of these areas where we have where we're going into construction, the potential delays, the scheduling conflicts, and the other issues that might occur just based on a lack of labor within these spaces, and particular, very particular to the state within which we were practicing. Now, I mentioned that they got really granular. They got into the trades themselves and which of the trades would be most affected by an absence of labor. And when they break that down, with the task associated to building, plasters, stucco masons, drywall, and ceiling tile installers had the majority, but it's still important to look beyond that to roofing, painters, wallpapering, those conditions at 50% or greater as well in terms of the construction trades being foreign-born, and then of course them being affected by at least half of those being undocumented individuals. Uh, so with immigration pressures and that chilling effect, it is going to have an impact primarily in these specific trades. And again, 43%, 34% in insulation. That's nothing to ignore. I just wanted to highlight those that are going to be most deeply impacted. Uh, if things change, we all know that the finishing quality of a building comes in later in the process of construction. So this idea of the drywalling, painting, carpeting, flooring, if things change through the process of construction, immigration policies lighten, then of course we would see these forecasts changing through the course of your production of a project. So just something to keep an eye on and understand that relationship between the trades themselves. One thing I was really worried about heading into this month was if our employment numbers went below 150,000. But employers added close to 177,000 jobs in April, way above most analysts' forecasts. They were forecasting we would be 150 or below. If we had gone below 150, and this is important to watch as we move into the next month as well, if we move below that 150 mark, 150,000 jobs added, that is a potential recession indicator. And one of the things that are being watched as an indicator towards financial risk within the profession and our overall economy. So, we want to make sure we continue to watch that and monitor what kind of jobs are being added, because, of course, construction isn't only reflected in this, but construction did add jobs as well. And I know that employment within the architectural space as well had a nice rebound ending the year, a little bit of reduction at this first quarter of the year, and is fairly much leveled out from a lot of turbulence that it had previously. A lot of firms right now are right sizing, and if they were dependent on grants or other federal funding, they may be downsizing or going through a reduction in force right now. And so that's what we've been seeing in the market right now is a reflection of some of the funding going away and grant specific funding towards projects. So now we're going to look at tariff impacts. So we talked about housing, we talked about labor, and as we get into tariffs, what we're looking at is the particular materials that we are including in our projects, and it's important to understand the source points. And again, from the AIA report, I wanted to just go through the three areas where they were the primary focus of the tariffs, right? Mexico, Canada, and China. Now, of these, Mexico and Canada, it was pulled back a little bit in terms of the tariffs. Still an issue that could occur, but China remains the primary focus because of the deficit. And if the deficit is the focus of why tariffs are being deployed and used, then we can anticipate that China will continue to be a target of the tariff, uh, let's say, negotiations and actions. When we look at Mexico, the key construction related imports we had there were cement, gypsum, and appliances. With Canada, lumber, iron, steel, and construction machinery, aluminum. And then if we move on to China, we're looking at furniture, plastics, and electronics. And the reason this is important to understand if we are uh, impacting our input cost on construction primarily from one source or from one location, that's going to be very particular to the sector within which you are practicing and the type of building that might be dependent on electronics, let's say labs or healthcare, and those types of spaces, a little more high tech infrastructure needed within a building type versus those that are in the primary construction and fundamental components of a building, iron and steel, gypsum and cement. And so, where we saw the impact initially from tariffs on Mexico and potential retaliation there, that would have affected the entire construction landscape because cement, gypsum, appliances are wide reaching. Same with Canada when we were looking at lumber and steel, as well as construction machinery. If we're to increase construction of onshoring and manufacturing and warehousing, we need construction machinery, we need lumber, we need steel. And therefore, there was concern there that that would be wide-reaching impact on the increase on of industrial construction here in the U.S. as well. And so now, basically, in the report from the AIA, what we're focused on is the tariffs with China and how that's impacting us. Now, the exposure of the construction industry is more than most other industries. Construction industry exposure is about 10% related to others. Within single family home building, about 7% exposure, and all other industries are around hovering around 9% exposure. So what we witness in our day to day is that 9% exposure, and it's a bit more in construction. So that's important to pay attention to as your own day to day lives are impacted through goods and services. There's just a little bit more impact going on in the construction industry in terms of the relationship. So, if we were to focus on the imports coming from China and the types of imports that dominate the goods coming in, the consumer electronics, machinery, industrial equipment, and furniture goods, those are at the top of our imports in terms of this is billions of dollars of U.S. imports from China. If we look at that as a condition and then map that to the sectors who use those types of things, that's where it impacts our healthcare and educational project delivery the most. And so the highest impact that's currently anticipated by the AIA would be the educational and healthcare sectors. The lowest is in the single family residential and multifamily residential. Now, I wanted to pause on this for a second because the single family residential and multifamily residential is where we also see the highest need across the nation for construction. So again, this supports my not total confidence, but at least a optimistic outlook for the residential sector in terms of both the need and demand that's out there, as well as the limited impact potentially compared to other sectors that's going to happen in the residential sector. So that's what I'm looking at when I have optimism towards that area of practice. Now, to go through the final kind of overview, and if you want to call these takeaways from the economic update that was recently released, uh, again, we're facing uncertainty. We are looking at a delay or abandonment of construction, and architecture firms are expecting slimmer margins. The numbers I have here on the right is what happened between January and April. There was a 23% increase in economic predictions of a recession, uh, going from 22% chance to a 45% chance between January and April. And that's very concerning. And the recessions we've been through in the past, we know how they have affected us in the AEC. And so continuing to watch and listen to economists and how they are looking at the economy and the impacts of these multiple factors will be extremely important moving forward. Because if the recession occurs, then you can imagine the abandonment, delay of projects, multiple dominoes start to fall. And so keep watching that, keep paying attention to the updates, both from Kermit Baker and the economic team at the AIA in terms of how it relates. But then also, I think a great source is looking at Construct Connect um, and Dell Tech and some of these other sources that are putting out some excellent information to keep us all informed. And right now, I just wanted to mention that the AI has a economic resources and insights page on their website that you can go to. You can do a simple search for that, economic resources, and it really helps us understand the profession from a global perspective, a national perspective, and then all the way down to our own individual sectors and areas of employment. They've done a great job consolidating that information on the website. So make sure you use that as a resource to keep up to date. Um, so again, this slowdown has been occurring, let's say from 22 to 25. So we're at a 3-year mark of looking at this decrease in a slowdown. That's why I said even in the past months we've been talking about a slower 2025, and that's what we're in right now. It's right now at about the 100 mark here in terms of the index based on 2016, and this has been ongoing. But you can see where we are right now. We're at this trough that's below where we've been, you know, prior. And so we want to, when we look at our individual projects and what's going on and the stress we're experiencing within our firms, that's definitely related to what's happening on the ground with abandoned projects, um, delayed bidding on projects, other projects that are on hold. And so just some concern in that space. And the composite is your dash line there so that you can see that as well as the average, and you see where we are as a kind of higher stress level than we would like in the industry. And you can see the turmoil that we've been going through 24 and up to 25 as well. Another bright spot I wanted to leave you with, and this is our last slide of the day. Just want to leave you with the current backlog. Uh, about this time last year, we hit about 7 months of backlog for architecture firms. Here in the chart, about 7.2, and now we're at about 6.5. So not a major decrease in terms of the impact that these abandoned projects have had right now on the measurement of our backlog. So if work were to stop right now, 6.5 months of work on the boards is what averages out. Now this is varied across different sectors of practice, of course, but it averages out to about 6.5. And what I've heard is that the smaller firms are experiencing greater stress levels in terms of lower backlogs. The larger firms are having the larger backlog quantity of months, and so it's skewing us to the 6.5. But we, of course, each firm, each size firm, and each firm focused on individual sectors has a different reading. Again, you can go to the AIA economic reports and firm survey to look at some of those numbers to get even more details in this. So with that, I just wanted to conclude, and I wanted to thank you all for joining me today for this session. And we've got time for a little Q&A if anyone has any insights or questions they want to share. And Natalie's going to help us out here with the chat. And we have a QR code up for the economic page, so you can go right to that to get deeper insights into much of the topic that I covered today. All right. Well, scan the code if you can. Be sure to support the AIA and the type of information they're putting out there. And hopefully, our summary today was helpful for you and your business outlook and what you've been seeing within your practice. Continue to monitor, and we'll be back next quarter with another report. And then we do our monthly insights as well from Cove to help you out and understand this market. So thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.